What's happening, all my friends out there? Welcome to Gamers with Gains. So today I'm talking about one game in particular, Sword Art Online Re-Hollow Fragment for the PlayStation 4. Now, I reviewed this game over on thecoalition.com, which you guys could check out in the description box below. There's a link directly to it. But I want to talk about my review a little bit. I want to talk about the game for a little bit as well. So, overall, I scored the game about a 60 out of 100. You know, a decent score, not anything too good or too great, but at the same time, not too bad. Overall, you know, throughout the entire gaming landscape, you know, from different outlets and such, the game has been getting kind of panned a little bit. If anything, I kind of scored it a little bit on the higher end of the scale. You know, most outlets, from what I saw anyway, you know, looking through Metacritic, looking through other websites that I frequent all the time, it usually got around a 50 to 55 for a number of different reasons. Now, the game itself is a re-release, kind of like a, you know, a remastering almost of a game that was on the PlayStation Vita called Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment. Re-Hollow Fragment being like, it's like the re-release of the actual game. The game's graphics kind of got shined up a little bit for the PlayStation 4. There's a little bit of extra content from the original release. Again, it looks pretty cool. And if you're a fan of the series, you have something to like here. But then there's all these different bunch of problems that I found during my experience playing the game, which caused me to kind of give it a lower end score. So, couple different things I want to touch up on, okay? Because I know I was going through my actual review on thecoalition.com and I saw a bunch of comments and stuff, and some people were pretty upset about what I had to say about the game. You know, again, maybe it's because it's anime fans, or because, again, they're a huge fan base of, like, you know, people out there for this particular game, but I had to call a spade a spade. Number one, there's a bunch of graphical problems, you know, different types of frame rate dips and slowdown throughout the entirety of the game, specifically in spots like the town when there's a lot of NPCs all over the place. You know, all of a sudden I would just go into an area, you know, just trying to either look for a particular character or go explore a specific spot where I hadn't frequent before, and all of a sudden the game would just slow down to a crawl for whatever reason. Granted, it's on the PlayStation 4, and, you know, I know this game came from the PlayStation Vita, but there shouldn't be a huge amount of slowdown, you know, between the two consoles like that. The PlayStation 4 is a lot more powerful, so I don't see what the problem was. On top of that, one of the things that really kind of irked me a little bit, and for whatever reason people seem to be giving a free pass or an excuse for, is the way that you actually find and actually partner up with different characters from the series that go on with you on these different quests and missions. Now, it would have been much more practical for someone like me, again, playing so many RPGs over the years and writing about them, is if either, one, I could find all the main characters or cast, you know, from the main plot of the story in one specific spot, or I could actually call them or kind of get connected with them through a menu easily without having to go to specific spots and search for a specific character that I want to pair up with. You know, most of the time I was rolling around not only as Kirito, but my partner Asuna, who's basically the two main characters of the Sword Art Online anime and manga. But in order to get to them, in order to pair up with them, if you're not already paired up with them at one point, you either have to look on your menu for the specific location where they're roaming around in town and then go and find them. I found that a little bit tedious. I found that a little bit unneeded and kind of like, you know, a little dumb for for an RPG game where most of the time you're going to be paired up with another character. Now, don't get me wrong. There's all these characters that you could actually partner up with, which are from the show, you know, from different seasons and stuff. This game kind of takes place in a kind of like a weird spot in the timeline of the Sword Art Online anime. It's not really exactly clear. It has to be at least after season 1 / you know, into season 2, something kind of like that. You know, and again, it's in Japanese voices and such, so there really is no English voice acting, so it's really hard to tell. But even though there's all these characters you could kind of pair up with and such, if you want a specific character that's maybe your favorite, you have to kind of go through these steps in order to kind of get to them, which I just found a little bit tedious and unneeded. At the same time, most of the time you'll end up pairing up with characters just for pretty much the entirety of the adventure. Now, you will change up in certain spots where you have to pair up with a specific character, again, for story purposes or for side mission purposes and stuff, but it's not like you're going to be roaming around with this entire party for most of the game. You're going to be just, you know, with one other partner, which I found a little bit kind of annoying because, you know, most other RPGs, especially ones on the PlayStation 4, you'll be able to have multiple characters with you in a party while you're roaming around doing quests and stuff like that. Now, this is from the original PS Vita game, and again, I really think that was probably due to limitations of the hardware of the PS Vita, but now we're on the PlayStation 4. I mean, it would have been a little bit much more better, in my opinion, and would have spiced things up if there was like either an extra partner or two that you could bring with you on quest, you know, when you're exploring the different games environments. But that's a little nitpick, and everybody would probably have their own stance on that. So a couple of the other things I want to touch up upon why I felt this game, wasn't that great. The risk system. Now, here's another thing that for whatever reason, people seem to be giving a free pass to, even though I think it's kind of horrible. I think it's kind of bad. It does make a lot of sense. It really the game kind of throws all this information at you in the beginning during a tutorial, which is kind of a little bit hard to absorb at first and a little bit unpractical where it's kind of like just flinging info at you about all these different parts of the battle system and all the different things you could do. The risk system in particular, I feel, it feels like an unneeded step or an unneeded thing to include in the game, because the way it works, from my understanding and from trying it out multiple times throughout the entirety of the game, is basically when you get into battle, okay, and you're fighting different enemies and such alongside your partner, over time during the battle and as you kind of run into different enemies, you start building up this risk meter. It goes from 1 to 5, or 0 to 5 I should say. 0, pretty much you're not at risk from pretty much any sort of enemy. You're not taking a lot of damage, but you're also dealing a lot of damage. Once it gets to 5, that's when the whole dynamic of a battle can change. Now, I can understand that the more risk you kind of build up over time, the more damage you're going to take, the less damage you're going to deal. And in order to kind of reset that, you have to switch positions, quote unquote, or switch places with your partner. Again, it feels very confusing in the way that it's explained, and it isn't kind of practical in the grand scheme of the actual battles that you play. The battles, they're done in real time, very similar to like Tales of Symphonia. That's like my best comparison I could kind of put it to. But again, this whole switch system is like you could be in different positions on the map, just fighting this enemy, probably circling around, and then have to switch. And all of a sudden your partner just comes out of nowhere, just gets right in front of you, and then it just starts getting all weird and it looks like it's glitching out, to be honest with you. Seeing it in video, it's a little bit hard to kind of explain other than being a little bit kind of like all over the place like I am. But if you ever seen videos of people just in the battle system and then switching, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But what really gets my nerves a little uneasy is because when you get into battles against enemies that you're vastly overpowered against, where let's say you have like 20 levels above their actual, level count or whatnot, all of a sudden, once you start building up the risk all the way to 5, even though you're 20 levels above, you start not dealing a lot of damage other than when you actually use super attacks and such. Or that all of a sudden the enemy will start damaging you ridiculously, taking out a huge chunk of your health, forcing you to use up items in order to heal. I just found that didn't make any sense to me, especially coming from a traditional RPG background. If you're overpowered by at least like a good 5, even 10 levels, I'll even give you that. That close, you're still going to be vastly overpowered against enemies that are like in the level 1 area. They shouldn't be dealing damage to you like that, nor should you not be taking out so little health from their actual health bars. You're 20 levels above. You already are ridiculously overpowered compared to them. So why is it that doesn't make sense like that? Again, the risk system just feels like, again, an unneeded inclusion, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, in addition to that, final thing I want to say about it, as part of this review, because I know I'm going long. The quests themselves, again, a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense, and the way that it's explained to you is either very quickly or not explained at all. And what I mean by that is this. When you actually go through each area of the game, you have different floors, very similar to the Sword Art Online anime and the manga, where you do a series of quests, and then at some point you have the ability to go fight a boss within one of the dungeons, which is like the main dungeon boss for the entire floor, before you advance to the next floor of the game, which is like the next level and such. Now, at first, playing through the game, everything seems all hunky-dory or whatnot, and the game explains to you that you have to give time to, members of your party or members of your community to start getting information about the level's boss or the stage's boss fight and such, different things about the boss fight, what type of enemy it is, what type of elements it's weak to, its strengths, its weaknesses, all these different things. But it kind of gives you the impression that it happens over time, like as you do different actions and such. And then when it gets to a specific point where you feel like you have all this information, it doesn't tell you where you actually need to go and complete all the different side quests, a la Monster Hunter, or like a la any other kind of offshoot RPG, before you actually advance to the boss fight. It doesn't make that very clear, even in the tutorial when I actually was going through it and such. It feels, again, a little bit of an offshoot, like a little bit lazy in development. It, again, wasn't made very, very clear. There was a time when even when I first started the game, in the first stage, the first floor, I should say, when I'm doing all these different quests, I had just finished exploring all these areas in this dungeon leading up to where the boss fight is. It's like, okay, you have to go back to town now, to make sure you collect enough data and info about the boss before you actually fight it. Okay, that makes sense. Once I go back to town and I see the entire description or pretty much layout of the actual boss fight, all the info I've gathered, I feel like, okay, it looks like everything's complete. Why can't I fight the boss fight? And then once I keep doing that, all of a sudden the game just keeps telling me, it's like, hey, listen, we still got to get more time to get more information, if not also gather up our party members. Okay, so I went out, did a couple extra missions, and then all of a sudden I went back and I'm still getting the same type of message. It doesn't tell you that you have to go back to the quest board in the town to finish all those quests before you could actually get to the boss fight. It was like, wow. I went through all this time. I think I was playing for maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hours doing other stuff, not being told that until finally I accidentally just ran into that because I tried to complete all the stuff that was around me. And I was getting really frustrated and annoyed throughout the entirety I was actually playing it. The other thing on top of that too is that you have this whole extra area called the Hollow area, which relates to a lot of the story elements of the game. And at one point I kept thinking to myself, because nothing was happening with the boss fight and I wasn't able to access it and stuff, I had to go to that whole area. I was like, okay, well, they could have told me that you could go to this area and do all these other things and see if it actually relates to what's going on to the main story before I could fight the boss fight. So I went and I did some stuff over there, which, by the way, those quests are very vague. The wording and the locations, the little indicators, the little exclamation points on the map, very vague, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes the maps don't even make a lot of sense in the direction that you're going. I know there's a whole maze area in one of the first spots in the game, but then there's other areas that, again, the maps are built in a specific way that it doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of like some of the bigger maps. It just is all over the place. But once I did all that stuff in the Hollow area, I come back and I still haven't advanced the area that was going on for the actual boss fight. I didn't get enough information, so I still had to go back and do all those quests. I was like, wow, there could have been some sort of notification or something or anything to let me know, listen, go finish up these quests so you could actually get stuff done. I'm all for exploration, I'm all for immersion and stuff, but at the same time, I'm also in for it for practicality. It's not holding your hand as much as just letting you know, hey, listen, you got all this stuff to do if you want to advance the story. You got all this other side content you could do too, but this is how you could also advance the story. It would have been a little bit much more manageable, a little bit more practical, a little bit better overall for the game experience. Other than that, that was the score that I ended up giving Sword Art Online Re-Hollow Fragment. Again, it's not a terrible game. It is still passable, it's still decent and such, but it definitely is not good and it's definitely not great. And not the ideal Sword Art Online game that we all deserve as fans of the series. So, that's my thoughts, guys. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Check out my review of Sword Art Online Re-Hollow Fragment over on thecoalition.com. Leave me a comment here or on the actual review and such, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace out. Stay epic, everybody.